History remembers kings and conquerors. But legends? Legends are carved from the impossible. From shattered empires, desperate battles, and whispered revolts. They rose. Warriors, visionaries, ghosts who defied fate itself. Some led armies against impossible odds. Others fought with words, with fire, with death itself. Chronotales presents the top 10 legendary figures who shaped Korean history. At our first spot, we have the Stormbringer, Admiral Yi Sun-sin. In a land where the sea roared like a mighty dragon, there was a man the world had overlooked. Yi Sun-sin was no noble warrior born into glory, twice rejected by the military, betrayed by his own people, cast into prison and chained in disgrace. A man like that wasn't supposed to be a hero, but fate had other plans. When the storm of war came crashing in, 1592 Japan, 150,000 invaders, the kingdom cried out for a miracle. And Yi answered. His first great battle? Myeongnang, 1597, 12 ships, that's all he had, against 333 enemy warships. His officers trembled, his men wavered. "Admiral, we must flee," they pleaded. But Yi stood at the helm, his eyes fierce as the raging tide. "The war is lost only when I fall." He knew the sea like an old friend, its whispers, its secrets. He lured the enemy into the narrow strait, where the waves churned like wild stallions. The Japanese fleet charged, sure of their victory. But Yi had set a trap, not of rope and steel, but of wind and water. The tides shifted. The enemy ships twisted, crashed, locked together like fish in a net. Then Yi struck. Cannon fire roared, slicing through the mist. Arrows darkened the sky. Flames leapt across the waves, turning the sea into a battlefield of fire and fury. When the smoke cleared, 31 enemy warships had sunk into the abyss. And Yi, not a single ship lost. His legend only grew, but even heroes are mortal. In 1598, as Korea stood for its final battle, Yi was struck by an enemy bullet. His vision blurred, the world dimmed, but his voice rose, steady as ever. "The battle is not over. Do not let my death be known." His men obeyed, their hearts burning with his final command. The fight raged on, and the enemy never knew. Victory belonged to Korea. Yi Sun-sin, the Stormbringer, had died standing, a sword in his hand, his ship still sailing. On our number 2 slot we have the architect of words, King Sejong the Great. What's more powerful than swords? Words. And no one understood that better than King Sejong. He ruled a world where only the wealthy could read. The poor? Their voices were stolen before they could even speak. Because the ruling elite clung to Chinese characters, a maze of symbols so complex it took years to master. Sejong was furious. "You call yourselves rulers," he told his scholars, "yet you build walls instead of bridges." So, in 1443, he did the impossible. He created a brand new alphabet, Hangul. 14 consonants, 10 vowels, so simple a child could learn it in a morning. A gift of knowledge, not just for the few, but for everyone. The aristocrats were outraged. "A language for fools," they scoffed. They tried to bury it, to silence it. But Sejong would not be silenced. He printed books, wrote songs, carved words into stone, declaring to the world that Korea had found its voice. And though he left this world in 1450, his words never faded. Today, Hangul stands as Korea's greatest treasure, a monument built not from stone, but from the power of a dream. And then at 3 we have the Queen with 1,000 eyes, Queen Jindeok. Silla's enemies laughed when they heard a woman would rule. They weren't laughing for long. Queen Jindeok wasn't just a queen. She was a prophet, a strategist, a shadow on the battlefield. People swore she had 1,000 eyes, that she could see things before they happened. When her court asked why she built an observatory, Joseon Day, she smiled and said, "The sky whispers secrets. I plan to listen." One night, she heard whispers of a rebellion. Her own generals had turned against her. Instead of panicking, she sent a message. "The rain will drown the traitors before their blades ever reach me." That night, a storm rolled in, floods swallowed the roads, and her enemies never even made it to the palace gates. Coincidence? No one dared to say. Even in death, she left a prophecy. "When I am buried, a kingdom will fall." And sure enough, just a few years later, Silla's enemies tore through the land. A queen gone, a kingdom broken. The woman who saw the future had predicted even her own absence. At our number 4 spot, the man who defied the sky, Jang Yong-sil. If you were born poor in Joseon, forget about greatness, unless you were Jang Yong-sil. A blacksmith's son, he was never supposed to enter the palace, let alone befriend a king. But King Sejong saw something in him, a mind like no other, a hunger to create. "You see the world differently," Sejong told him. "Show me what you see." So he did. Jang built the first Korean water clock, then an astronomical sphere that mapped the heavens. But his greatest feat? The rain gauge. You think that's small? Not in the 1400s. The ability to measure rainfall meant predicting floods, saving crops, and feeding a nation. It was science as a weapon against disaster. But his enemies were waiting. The noble class hated that a commoner had more power than them. So they framed him. They destroyed his work, exiled him, erased his name. But here's the thing about visionaries. Their ideas never die. Centuries later, his inventions still stand, and the rain gauge, it became a worldwide standard. The commoner defied the sky itself and won on the halfway spot of 5, the Phantom General, Eulji Mundeok. No one saw him coming. Not the 300,000 Chinese soldiers marching into Go Gyeong-myeong. Not Emperor Yang of Sui, who thought his army was unstoppable. But one man, Eulji Mundeok, was watching. He let the enemy advance deep into Korean land, letting their arrogance swell, their supplies dwindle. Then, when they reached the Salsu River, he struck. He opened the floodgates. A wall of water obliterated thousands. The survivors stumbled in panic, and then the real slaughter began. Goguryeo forces, waiting on the cliffs, rained down arrows. Thousands more fell. The mighty Sui army reduced to a humiliated, starving handful. Eulji didn't just win. He humiliated one of the strongest empires in history. And then he disappeared, his name whispered like a ghost in the wind. A general without a grave. A warrior who never lost. Moving on to number 6, Taejo, the unstoppable rebel king. The year is 696, and Tang China thinks it owns the world. Goguryeo? Crushed. Balhae? Doesn't even exist yet, but then Taejo bursts onto the scene like a storm. He's not a noble, not a prince, just a general's son who refuses to bow. When the Tang army rounds up Goguryeo survivors to force them into their ranks, he sees an opening. At Tianmenling, the dust rises. The Tang general Li Kaigu thinks he has Joseon cornered. He smirks, watching the outnumbered rebel force, ready to crush them like insects. But Joseon? He laughs. His troops pull a move straight out of the god's playbook, luring the enemy into the valley, then slam. The hills erupt in an ambush. Thousands of Tang soldiers are shredded, their mighty army crushed by a man who was supposed to be a nobody. Balhae is born, and Taejo sits on the throne. But peace is a fragile thing. He knows the Tang will return. He spends his reign building, fortifying, preparing. The world doesn't hand power to survivors, it hands it to warriors. And Balhae survives. At number 7, Nonggae, the Giseng who brought an army to its knees. The Imjin War rages, and Jinju Fortress is drowning in blood. The Joseon army fights like demons, but Japan's forces are relentless. The fortress falls. The victors celebrate, raising cups of stolen wine in the moonlight. But among the captives, one woman stands untouched. Nonggae, a Giseng whose beauty silences even battle-hardened generals. Kobayakawa Takakage, one of the highest-ranking samurai, watches as she approaches. She smiles, soft as silk, whispering words of praise. He believes her. He wants to believe her. When she invites him to the edge of a cliff, where the Nam River roars below, he follows. She cups his face, leans in, and then grabs him. Her arms coil around his body in a death grip. The last thing he hears is her voice. "For my homeland." Then they plunge. She takes him down, a Giseng who just assassinated a general in the most spectacular way possible. Closing in on the end, we have our number 8 spot with Hongyeong-nae, the phantom who defied an empire. The year is 1811, and Joseon is rotting from the inside. Corruption strangles the land, taxes bleed the poor dry, and the people are furious. But they don't have a leader. Not yet. Enter Hongyeong-nae. He's no ordinary rebel. He's a shadow, a whisper, the man who can walk through walls and vanish like smoke. In Pyongan province, he raises an army. Thousands of farmers, scholars, warriors swarming. Like fire ants, he marches into Jeongju, seizing the fortress without breaking a sweat. The Joseon court panics. This isn't just a rebellion, it's a revolution. The people call him a king, a messiah, the man who will burn the old order to the ground. But the dynasty fights back. Government forces storm the fortress, laying siege for months. The walls crumble, the rebels weaken, and then betrayal. Someone on the inside sells him out. His location is revealed. The walls crash down, swords flashing, flames swallowing everything. Did they kill him? Did he escape? No one knows. His body was never found. To this day, whispers say he still walks among the people, waiting for his moment. At number 9, Kim Mundeok, the merchant who outsmarted fate. Jeju Island. 1739. A baby girl is born into the lowest class, a gisang before she can even choose, a woman with no future. But Kim Mandeok doesn't do limits. She doesn't do fate. She does business. She watches, listens, learns. Soon, she starts trading, not in cheap pleasures, but in something far more powerful. Supplies. Salt, rice, silk. She builds a network, a trade empire no man can rival. By the time she's grown, she's the richest merchant in Jeju, feared and respected by governors, nobles and pirates alike. Then, disaster, famine hits, the people starve, the government drags its feet. Mandeok doesn't. She empties her entire fortune, feeds the island, saves thousands. The king hears of this merchant-turned-savior and grants her any wish. She doesn't ask for power. She doesn't ask for land. She asks to travel, to see the kingdom she helped save. And so she does. The merchant queen dies free, and at our last spot, number 10 in the list of the top legendary figures who shaped Korean history, we have Kim Gu, the man who refused to kneel. A teenager commits murder. Kim Chang-soo, later Kim Gu, sneaks into a room, blade in hand, and executes a Japanese official, the man responsible for Korea's suffering. Arrested, tortured, sentenced to death. But when Japan's forces crumble, he escapes. Kim Gu doesn't break. He evolves. He spends decades moving like a ghost, rallying resistance, plotting Korea's return. By 1919, Korea is gone from maps, but not from hearts. The Provisional Government of Korea is formed in China. And who leads it? Kim Gu. While others bow, negotiate, plead, he declares, independence through blood. Through war, exile and occupation, he fights. The world moves, politics shift, but Kim Gu never wavers. Even after Korea is freed in 1945, he sees the next threat. Division. North and South. Brother against brother. He dreams of unity, but before he can act, a bullet finds him in 1949. Even in death, his words echo, "I want our people to be strong, but not to conquer. I want them to be noble, but not to bow." As an added bonus, I have a whirlwind of a tale, number 11 if you will. The tale of Jang Deok-soo, born in 1536, a clever, ambitious man who dreamed of the grandest throne in all of Joseon. He was sly, sneaky, and oh so charming. He wormed his way into the king's court, using his wits to charm and manipulate the royal family. By 1575, Jang was the king's closest advisor, pulling all the strings like a puppet master. But the winds of fortune change quickly. In 1589, his lies caught up to him, his enemies united, and poof, his reign of trickery was over. He was stripped of his power and sent away for his naughty deeds. From a star to a fallen star, Jang's rise and fall is one wild ride through ambition, secrets and tremendous betrayal. Now that's a tale for the ages, and so these 10 Koreans and one extra bonus legend are a handful of souls, armed with nothing but defiance, bent history to their will. Thank you for joining me for this journey through history and mythology. Until next time, stay enlightened. If you made it this far and liked the video, don't forget to give it a like. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's your favorite movie or book on Korean history or mythology? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to join the growing community of history and mythology seekers of chronotales. Thank you for watching.